Hello guys and welcome to today's session. Today we are going to talk about Intune job opportunities in Microsoft. So before we take a look over the agenda, I wanted to take a moment and talk about why is this nugget relevant and why is this going to be of help. So, guys, I started my IT career with HCL, and then I had a chance to work in IBM as a server administrator. So, over there, I had an opportunity to work with on-premise servers, virtualization, little bit of Hyper-V, VMware, Citrix, group policy management, and stuff like that. So, I had predominantly always worked upon Microsoft technologies. And at that point of time, the aim was always getting into the company which actually manufactures or which actually makes these products, makes these technologies. So that is what the intent was. So if any of you guys have an intention of moving from, let's say, a service-based organization to a product-based organization, I'm hoping that this nugget would be useful for you. Now, again, I don't want to get into a discussion of comparing the both. I'm sure that both has its pros and cons, but there is one pro definitely that I would want to call out of working in a product-based company wherein you're working on that product. Like for example, let's say that we are working on the product Intune as a Intune engineer, or I mean whatever that designation may be, in a service-based organization. So usually when we are doing that as an Intune admin, our reach is pretty much limited. We can work on the deployment, we can work on the solutioning. So let's say that we have a customer, he wants to make use of Intune, then we can help in creating a solution document. We can we can work as a consultant wherein we can tell them that this is how you can implement Intune, these are the things that you can do from Intune, and when the customer agrees, then we can help in creation of those policies and deployment of those policies and all of that. And when things fail, we can do some level of troubleshooting as well. However, there are a lot of things that we cannot do if we are not, I mean, if we don't have access to the backend. Like, for example, let's say that the enrollment of a device is failing, very basic issue. Well, we have an option of going to the portal, checking all the prerequisites, like you would be checking the licensing, you would be checking the device restriction, you will be making sure that MDM authority is set and stuff like that, right? Once all those troubleshooting has been done, and now let's say that you need to take a look over the device side logs, then you will be collecting the company portal logs from the device. Now let's say that the incident ID is generated and you have generated the company portal logs. Now how do you read it? Because that company portal logs always goes to Microsoft, right? Via incident ID. Or let's say that you want to take a look over the backend flow and understand what exactly is happening at the backend when the device is trying to enroll itself. Well, for that, you need to have access to the backend database, which only you can have if you're working in Microsoft. So the point that I'm trying to make is working in a product-based company on the product first gives you visibility into the backend flow, which is not made available to the public for obvious reasons. And second is we get ability to take a look over the things that are still in development or that are still in pipeline. We have an opportunity to interact with those people who are making those decisions. Like for example, let's say that I'm working in a service-based organization and I want to find out what are the in development features for Intune. For that, I would be going into the official documentation and I will see what I'll refer to the what's new documentation or in development documentation. And that is only going to contain so many things which has been documented, right? Which has been made public. But there are so many things which are there in the backlog, which our feature team and the product group work on tirelessly day and night to make it possible. Well, you don't have access to all of that, right? And you don't have access to all those decision making personnels who are going to decide how exactly the product is going to move forward. What is the roadmap of the product? Well, when you're working in that organization, you get an opportunity to, well, interact with them. You get an opportunity to attend their readiness session. You get an opportunity to attend their ask me anything sessions. There are so many different kind of sessions that happen, right? So the point that I'm trying to make here is, if your intention is moving from service based organization to a product based organization, in this case the product based organization being Microsoft, since we are talking about Microsoft Intune, then I'm hoping that this nugget is going to be of some help, and I'm going to answer questions like, what is it that we need to do in order to prepare ourselves? What are the different kind of roles that we can apply for in Microsoft for Intune? And how to distinguish and how to figure out which is the role best suited for us. Okay, so that is the preface of this nugget. I hope that we have an understanding of why we are talking about Intune job opportunities in Microsoft today. So this is what I plan to cover. This is what the agenda is. First, we will discuss the different kind of roles related to Intune that are there in Microsoft that probably somebody can apply. We'll talk about what is the similarity, what is the differences, what is the job description, what is it that one has to do in each of these roles. And then once I have explained all of that, probably that will help you in identifying which role fits you the best. Okay. Then we'll talk about how can one externally apply for a role. Then I'll try to provide some guidance on how one can prepare for most of these roles. And then we'll do a sample questionnaire and try to understand what are the kind of questions that can be asked in any of these interviews. Well, obviously, this is also, I mean, this is all my understanding of what kind of questions that can be asked. It always depends from position to position and role to role. But this is what the intent is. Okay, so first let's take a look over the different kind of roles in Microsoft. So if I have to categorize the roles in Microsoft, I would categorize it into three different buckets. The first bucket or the first wing being CSS or Customer Support Center. The second wing or the second bucket being Field, and the third bucket being IDC. Now let's understand what are these three buckets. Let's first understand from an org perspective what are these three, and then we will understand what are the roles inside of it. So CSS or Customer Support Center is you can call it a org in Microsoft, wherein the support folks are present. So let's say that you have a contract with Microsoft. Let's say that you are making use of Microsoft Intune product, right? Let's say that you have a tenant, you have an Intune license, okay? And let's say that you have a premier contract with Microsoft. So if from that tenant you raise any support case, so that support case gets assigned to a support engineer, right? So that support engineer sits out of this org. He's a part of the Customer Support Center org. So whenever we are, let's say that we are facing any issues, we go to the Intune portal, we raise a case, that case gets assigned to a engineer, that being the support engineer in Microsoft. Now, the CSS or the support model works on tickets. So whenever we are raising a case, a ticket is created. So you would have seen that whenever you're raising a case from the portal, there is a ticket number that is generated, and all the troubleshooting, all the conversation that is happening between you as a customer and the support engineer in Microsoft is with the reference to that ticket number. So everybody in this org is working on tickets, wherein tickets are getting assigned. You're resolving that ticket. You're making sure that the ticket is scoped so that everybody is in agreement that what is it that needs to be, what is it that we are going to troubleshoot under that issue. And once there is an agreement, once the issue is resolved, the ticket is closed. Then the next ticket can be assigned from next customer. Okay. Now the second org would be the field org. So all those people who are there in the field team, they don't work on tickets. So let's say that let's say that I am a customer and I don't have an issue. Let's say that I want to implement the enrollment of iOS devices to my environment. I need to implement the enrollment of dev devices. Now there are a lot of things that needs to be set up in my environment before the enrollment can even begin, right? Like the APNS needs to be set up, the dep token needs to be set up. I need to have access to the Apple Business Manager. I need to go to the Apple Business Manager and upload the serial numbers, right? And then I need to create the profiles, right? There are so many things that needs to be done to make sure that my tenant is ready. So the field folks usually work on setup and deployment. So these guys are working on troubleshooting, primarily troubleshooting. These guys are working primarily on setup and deployment. Okay. So let's say that there's a customer who wants to implement NDES, right? Certificate deployment via Intune. And he hasn't got that set up. So he will be reaching out to one of these people from the field, and that field engineer, who can be a consultant or a PFE or a fast track, he will be working on setting up the tenant or setting up the customer's infrastructure so that that use case is met. So that is field. Then we have IDC. Now IDC is a different org in Microsoft, that is Internal Development Center. And there are a lot of roles inside IDC. We will talk about all of this later. Okay. And then in the others, I have listed those roles which are not directly related to Intune, but I mean, if any of you are interested, probably you could apply for any of these roles as well, because they are also pretty much related to Intune. Okay. All right. So first, let's talk about CSS. Okay, so support engineers are the ones who are getting cases assigned whenever whenever as a customer, anybody is going to the portal raising a case, they are getting the cases assigned, and you can think of them as L1 or L2. Now, whenever support engineers run into some kind of issues, they escalate it to a support escalation engineers. You can think of them as a SME or L3. Then there are technical advisor roles as well, wherein the technical advisor's job is technically advising all the support engineers and all the cases that they have with them. So all the issues that support engineers are working on, technical advisors are going to technically advise them and help them close the cases so that the resolution is met. So you can think of technical advisor as pretty much who would do the same thing as a support escalation engineer. The difference being these guys are SMEs in Intune and they only work on the technical stuff. The technical advisors do a little bit of non-technical stuff as well, like looking at the CSAT, DSAT, doing customer recovery and stuff like that. Now, partner technical advisor is same as technical advisor. The only difference being they work with the partner team. So when I say partner team, I mean, you would have heard that. So we have support engineers in Microsoft. Similarly, we have support engineers in Concentrix or Converges as well, right? So the partner technical advisors are advising the support engineers in partner team, like in Concentrix or Converges or whatever the partner team might be. So I hope now we have an understanding of what CSS does, Customer Support Center does, and this is the org that is responsible for working on cases, handling customer issues, and resolving them. Now, field they don't work on cases, they have a one-on-one alignment with a customer. They are going to help in resolving doing a specific kind of deployment, a solutioning or deployment. Once that is done, they will move on to the next customer. Now that is what exactly a consultant does. So let's say that you want to implement iOS enrollment, or let's say you want to implement Windows autopilot enrollment in your organization. So there are a lot of prerequisites that needs to be fulfilled from networking point, from Intune point, and then the entire autopilot is going to start working for you, right? May that be from hardware hash standpoint, may that be from unboxing standpoint. The consultant is going to consult with you and he's going to advise you that what is the best feature in the technology that you can use and they help in a little bit of customization as well. So let's say that you want to achieve something which is inbox natively not present in Intune. So the may that be consultants, or may that be PFEs, or may that be fast tracks, they will help you in customizing that as well. Let's say that you want to achieve something which can only be done via uh, PowerShell. Okay, so they would help you in creation of those PowerShell scripts. They would help you in testing of those, and then they will help you in deployment. So they help you in some kind of customization as well if the feature is not present out of the box. But more often than not, as I said, that field is responsible for solutioning and deployment. So the consultants and the PFEs, or also known as the customer engineers or the fast track or the EEs, they pretty much do the same thing. Now the billing might be different. That is why the separate roles are present. But from a technical standpoint, as far as the job description goes, I mean, 1,000 feet overview would be all of them are pretty much doing more or less the same thing. Now, the partner technical consultants are consulting the the partners, right? Instead of so the same difference between technical advisor and an advisor would apply over here as well between consultants and partner technical consultants. Okay. All right. And now then we have the IDC, that is the Internal Development Center. And inside of IDC, there are these roles that exist related to Intune. So first is an ACE service engineer, or advanced cloud engineering service engineer. So this ACE service engineer, uh, this role is actually for the entire M365 suite, but you need to specialize in a specific product inside of M365, which can be Intune as well. So over here, the A service engineers are responsible for some customers, and they will make sure that the M365 adoption for that customer is working fine. And if there are any, and they have a lot of access to the feature PMs and the PGs, and they make sure that if any of their customers are raising any DCRs or need any solutioning, then they are able to assist with that. The service engineers from the SAF team, they are, you can think of them as EEs. So if you have heard about the traditional EEs or the escalation engineers would be the ones who would debug the product. Let's say that there is some kind of dump you have collected, and that dump needs some kind of analysis. So it was the EEs who would do it. So in the cloud world, we call them service engineers from the software as a feature team. And they are, I mean, one of the most technical guys you will see in Intune. So as a service engineer in this team, you have an access and you need to do a lot of troubleshooting related to the backend flow and stuff like that. So highly technical role, and a lot of exposure to Intune. Now CXC CAT PMs, CXC is customer experience, and CAT is customer acceleration team, and PMs is product manager. So they are responsible for, again, deployment, adoption of the product, as well as getting insights from the customer, and then working with the PMs, feature PMs later on to inculcate those ideas into the product. The feature PMs, as the name suggests, feature product managers in Microsoft's, are the ones who are working on a specific feature. Like for example, there would be an Android feature PM who is responsible for releasing different capabilities of managing an Android device via Intune, right? So all those features are being worked upon by the feature PM. Now, feature PM works in very close collaboration with the software engineers. These software engineers are the PGs or the product group. These all are in a way extension of product group itself, but the software engineers are the developers. So they are the ones who are writing the code, and that code is translating to a specific kind of feature in the product. And then we have product manager architects as well. To be an architect, you need to have maybe a level 200 understanding of corresponding products as well, and not just Intune, because as you can understand, architects is going to do a high level solutioning, right? So you need to know maybe like Microsoft Defender for endpoint, or maybe SEC. I mean, 4 or 5 products is what you need to know, which are closely knitted with each other. Okay, and then there are other roles as well, not exactly related to Intune, but pretty much similar. Like for example, MMD. So MMD is Microsoft Managed Desktop. So if you are from Intune background and you have a good understanding of Autopilot, then this might be one of the options as well of joining the MMD team as a service engineer or as a product manager. There is a product marketing manager option as well. You have to know what the product is and how we are showcasing this product in front of the customers, and I assume that you have to work with the field team, you have to work with the sales team and stuff like that. And then cloud solution architects as well. So you can think of cloud solution architect as pretty much similar to what a PM architect would be doing. The difference being, in cloud solution architect, you need to have understanding of various cloud related products along with Intune. Okay, so this would be a high level understanding of what are the different roles related to Intune in Microsoft. Okay, now the point is, how do you apply? So and all this information is publicly available. If you go to, I'll show you how to apply for a role, and when you go to apply for a role, for any role in Microsoft, for Intune, or for any role for that matter, you will see in job description all that I have said is already present. Okay, so now let's see how can we apply for a role in Microsoft. Okay, so the way you need to apply is go to any search engine and then go to careers.microsoft.com, and the process is very transparent. You just need to go to careers.microsoft.com, and over here you have an option of searching for a job. Okay, so what I would suggest is just go over here and type the word Intune. Okay, and then click on find jobs. Then it is going to show you all the jobs related to Intune over here. You have an option of refining your search as well. Let's say that I want to apply for a support engineer role. So over here, I'm going to type SUPPORT support engineer. And if you want, you can type in Intune here as well. You have an option of running in filters for country or region. Let's say if you want to apply for India, you can click over here and create the country region, and then you can set in filters based on a lot of options. Okay, so I have right now selected support engineer role, and I mean, let's say that there is a support engineer role, it's going to come up over here. Like for example, you see that there is a Intune support engineer role that is present. So I'm just going to click on this. You see that this job is available in 8 locations. I click on this, it shows it's available in Portugal, France, UK, Czech Republic, Germany, Poland, Hungary, Italy. I know it's not showing any of the openings in India as of this moment, but I mean, every quarters we have a lot of openings. Now when I click on this, it shows me a lot of information. It tells me that this position is full time, that it's not at a vendor payroll. And then obviously you're working as a support engineer, so this is an individual contributor role. This is the job ID, and then this is when the role was posted. And if I scroll down, it is going to talk about the responsibilities. That is what all a support engineer has to do. So it talks about we are responsible for customer support experience, troubleshooting the issues, identify cases that require escalation, and then working with support escalation engineer in escalation, create and maintain incident management requests to product group. I mean, whenever there is a bug, we need to work with the product group as well, and then provide roadmap, knowledge sharing, internal sharing, external sharing, and drive technical collaboration, and work on technical community building. Right. So pretty much this means is what the bottom line is, working with customers or in any cases that they are raising, providing them solutions, and whenever we are stuck, working with our technical advisors or support escalation engineers, and taking it from there. It's talking about qualification as well over here. So in this case, it is for a different region. Therefore, you see it says that fluent in German, French, or Italian. If it was based out of India, then it would just need English. and over here it's talking about the required experience. I would say that uh, don't rely on what is shown over here. Just think of the role that you're applying for. If you're applying for a role for a support engineer in Intune, you already know what is going to be the set of questions. I mean, you have an idea that what they are going to ask, right? It's going to be related to Intune, right? So it's fine if you see things related to AirWatch or Mobile Line over here. It's not mandatory that you need to know the third party solutions. Therefore it says, right, or third party solutions. So it's fine if you don't know these, but it's important that if you're applying for a Intune role in Microsoft, that you need to know Intune, right? Only then you will be able to work on Intune. And then at the bottom it talks about the benefits and perks, and then you have an option of clicking over here and doing an apply now. When you click on this apply now button, it's going to take you to the internal portal wherein you can fill in your profile, you can upload your resume, and then you would have applied. Then you can keep coming back to this portal. Once you have applied, then you can keep coming back to this dashboard and see what is the status of your application. So whenever the recruiter views it, it's going to show you that status. Whenever the interviews are scheduled, it's going to show you that status. Whenever, if I mean, fingers crossed, when you get that offer released, you can see that status over here and download the offer letter from here. Or if for any reason you're rejected, it is going to show you that status as well. So that is what a Intune support engineer, that is how you can look for an Intune support engineer role. Now, for example, let's say that I don't want Intune support engineer, I want to go for technical advisor. So I would search the word technical advisor over here. It would show me all the roles related to technical advisor. Let's say that I found this one. I know it says that this is technical advisor for network, because right now there is no opening for technical advisor for Intune. But I mean, now you know how to search for it, right? You just have to come over here, use the keywords over here, or use the keywords over here, and then put in filters for region or location. So now let's say that you put in technical advisor, and then it does the same thing, right? The responsibility is doing, you know what I've already explained what a technical advisor does, right? He advises all the support engineers on any technical cases, right? So it's talking about enabling swarming, collaboration on the cases as the business demands, interfacing with the CSAM, and doing customer recovery, and I mean, working on cases, case management, identifying the skills or gaps in the team, contributing to the creation of readiness. So you can think of a technical advisor as a technical team lead. Okay. All right. And then doing a lot of, I mean, you have to do a little bit of non-technical work here as well. Like over here, it says that doing trends forecasts for business, like doing the CSAT, DSAT, stuff like that. Lead or participate in building communities with peer delivery roles with SEs, EEs, triple E's, TAs, and stuff like that. Okay. And then it talks about the qualification. Over here you see that qualifications are mostly related to networking, because this is a networking role, but I'm just giving you an example. Had it been Intune, you would have seen stuff related to Intune over here only. And then at the bottom you see benefits and perks, which usually remains the same. You have an option of clicking on apply now. Okay, so we have spoken about technical advisor, we have spoken about support engineer. The same thing applies for a support escalation engineer as well. So if I go over here and type support escalation engineer, and maybe I can type that over here as well, support escalation engineer, then any role related to support escalation is going to come up over here. Okay, and then I have an option of putting in filters over here for the different city location and stuff like that. Okay, so we already know what a support escalation engineer is. Now, as I have said, in the field there were roles like consultants or PFEs, right? PFEs or customer engineer. If I want to look for that, again the same drill, I would come over here or here and type for a customer engineer role for Intune. So in the keyword I can put in Intune, and then let's say that something like this opens up, right? So then again, I know that this is for a different region like Spain. So if you want to look for India, you just have to put in that filter for India in the country or region. And then it talks about what exactly a customer engineer does, and the I have already explained you what a customer engineer does. He works directly with the customers. He works on deployment. He works on creating strategy. He works on adoption. And this is what exactly this responsibility is talking about. Okay. And then it talks about qualification. I mean, obviously for Intune, everything would be related to Intune only. And then there are benefits and perks. In customer engineer role, there is a little bit of traveling that is involved, but then it depends from role to role. So there might be a case wherein you are a customer engineer or a premier field. So earlier we used to call this PFE or a premier field engineer. Now the verbiage is changed to customer engineer. And then there might be a little bit of traveling that is involved. That is, we might have to go to the customer location to do some deployment, but it depends from roles to roles. The same thing happens for a fast track escalation engineer as well. So if you were to search for that, you can, I mean, come over here and try for fast track. Or let's say that you want to look for a ACE engineer. I have already spoken about what an ACE engineer does. Let's say that you want to do that, then I mean the drill is the same. So, or in the others, you saw that there was a section wherein I was talking about MMD, right? Or service engineer MMD. So this is a service engineer opening for MMD. And then, as I said, this is not exactly related to Intune, but this is pretty much similar because they work on Windows Autopilot and stuff like that. So over here in the qualification, you can see all the qualification that is needed. And if you think that this is relevant, all you have to do is apply. Over here, you see a little bit related to MDM policies and autopilot and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, if you have a good autopilot background and if you have an understanding of what MMD is, then you might as well apply for this. And then there are roles for software engineers. So we have already spoken about what software engineer is. Software engineer is a person who is the developer, right? So if you want to be a software engineer, I mean, again, the same drill, go over there, use the word software engineer and then click on search, and then something like software engineer opens up, and then these are all guys who are doing all hardcore coding, right? So you need to have a coding background. You need to be very good in coding because if you're applying for a software engineer role for Intune, they won't ask you how the UI works or how you can create a policy. They're going to test your coding skills. So this is exclusively for software engineer role is exclusively for developers. And then there are roles like cloud solution architects as well. I've already spoken about this. Cloud solution architects would be an architect who knows Intune as well as some other products related to Intune as well, like the entire M365 suite. They also work on solutioning, on deployment, on adoption. To be a cloud solution architect, you need to be a level 200 plus on 3 or 4 other related technologies other than just Intune. So just knowing Intune is not going to suffice. You need to know 3 or 4 other technologies. You need to be good in deploy. You need to have worked on a lot of deployments because that is what an architect does. Okay. So now you know how you guys can apply. You can so I have shown you the first option, that is applying directly in the Microsoft Career Portal. Now there is another option that you can use, that is obviously via LinkedIn. If you see any openings or partners. Okay, so first let's get some guidance around getting into the support role. And out of all the roles in support, getting in externally as a support engineer would be the easiest because you're working as a L1 or L2 kind of an engineer. Okay, so to prepare for a support engineer role in Intune, you need to have your basics clear. Okay, so this interview would be of a level 100 to 150, wherein let's say that you have selected, let's say that you are appearing for the interview. So more often than not, the questions would be from your comfort zone. So let's say that you have worked on Windows and Android and iOS management. So they will ask you questions related to Android enrollment, the various ways of enrolling Android devices, what is the difference, what is the similarity. There would be some troubleshooting related questions as well. There would be some scenario based questions as well. Okay. Similarly, for autopilot, let's say that you're autopiloting a device, the various ways of autopiloting a device, the difference between each of them, how do you troubleshoot, what are the logs you collect. If you know the registries, that always helps, gives a good impression. And if you know the background flow, that always helps. Now for support escalation engineer, this is all about logs and flow. You need to be, so support escalation engineer is helping the support engineers when the support engineer has reached end of line, right? So, well, obviously, when the support escalation engineer is working on the case, the basic level of troubleshooting is already done. Okay, you don't have to do the normal troubleshooting of what is there in the portal, right? You have to troubleshoot from the logs perspective. Now, if you're coming from an external organization, then obviously you wouldn't have had access to the Intune database, right? So there wouldn't be any questions related to Azure, related to the use of Azure Data Explorer or Kushto, but there would be a lot of flow and logs related question. Like for example, let's say that you are doing an Android enrollment and you're facing some kind of issues. What are the device side of logs that you can collect? Company portal is one, but then if let's say that an application is crashing, then you would ideally take a Android debugger log, ADB log, or a console log in case of iOS, right? Or in case of Windows, probably you will be taking some kind of dumps. If it is network related, you will be taking a network dump. And then the point that I'm trying to make is support escalation engineer from a troubleshooting point of view needs to be at a level 200 plus. He needs to know all the different kind of tools that are going to be used for troubleshooting. He needs to have a good understanding of the background flow. He needs to have good understanding of the logs, and he should be able to correlate the logs with the flow. Okay. Now, technical advisor, as I've already explained, what is it that a technical advisor does? It's pretty much similar to what a support engineer does, but um, um, does many additional things as well, right? Like working on the KRAs, working on CSAT, DSAT, working on some kind of telemetry and stuff like that. So, well, obviously, externally, people can apply as a technical advisor or as a partner technical advisor as well. In both the cases, I mean, the difference between this is 100% technical. This would be a little, I mean, mostly technical, but there would be some management related stuff as well that you would be doing. So if you're a technical advisor, you can aspire to become a reporting manager at some point of time down the line. Okay, so for a support role, for any of these roles, if it is a support engineer role, then you already know it has to be a level 100 to 150 for Intune. When I say 100 to 150, you need to know what the feature is. You need to know how that feature is implemented. You need to know the basics of troubleshooting. If you know, I mean, you need to know the basic of flow as well. I mean, if you're saying that you want to do autopilot, you need to know that what is the background flow that is working behind autopilot behind the scene. Only then you can do the basic level of troubleshooting. Just knowing to create an autopilot profile from the portal is not going to help, because I mean, the customer is coming. So as a support engineer working on customer cases, right? Now the customer would have already checked whether the autopilot profile is correctly created or not, right? So he's assuming that you are going to do some kind of troubleshooting. So if you know to maybe make use of the additional resources, like maybe a little bit of Graph API, that always helps, or Graph Explorer, right? That always helps. So I mean, as a support engineer, basic to intermediate level of troubleshooting. For a support escalation engineer, advanced level of troubleshooting with good understanding of logs and the flow, and correlating both of them. Similar thing around technical advisor as well. Now for the field related role like consultants, PFEs, partner technical consultant or fast track, you need to be good with deployment. So this is not that much into troubleshooting. This is more into deployment. So you should have done a lot of deployment from scratch. You should have done a lot of deployment in a lot of environment, so that you know what are the things that are needed, how to set it up from scratch, what are the different kind of issues that you get while you do the deployment, and most importantly, a little bit of customization as well. Because as I said, consultants, PFEs, these are the guys who are working, who are trying to first consult with the customer and provide them information around which feature in the product is the best they can use. Like for example, let's say that a customer says that he want to enroll a Windows device, right? So we have to understand their use case and then advise them whether provisioning package is the best approach, or whether group policy is the best approach, or if they have SCCM infrastructure in their environment, whether co-management is the best approach. And once we tell them what approach is the best for them, tailor made for them, then first we have to help the customer in deployment of that feature. And then if any customization is needed during that feature, then we are supposed to do that as well. So this would again be a level 200 plus kind of a role, or maybe level 200 kind of a role, but you need to be good with customization, and this is customer facing role, right? So you need to be good with handling customers and making sure that you are able to take care of the entire thing end to end, right? Because you will be the one working very closely with the customer. Now let's talk about the IDC related roles. So I've already said, to be a service engineer in the ACE team, you need to, so as I said, the service engineer in the ACE team takes care of the entire M365 suite, wherein you will be working as a SME in Intune. So you need to be a SME in Intune, as well as you need to you need to know a couple of other products in the M365 suite, like let's say Exchange or SharePoint or Teams or stuff like that. This So all these roles that I've spoken about, all these roles are available across the globe. So these are available in India, these are available in all the locations. Now, maybe openings are not there at all point of time, but support engineer, support escalation engineer, all these a technical advisor role, partner technical advisor, these are available across different regions in India. Okay, the same thing goes with field jobs as well. These are available across multiple regions in India. The service engineer role for ACE, if you check in the portal, it tells you the location, and this, as per my understanding, as per the job description publicly available in the portal, is based out of Hyderabad. That is the service engineer for the software as a feature team. These are the triple E's, having very detailed knowledge on background of Intune. They work exclusively on the service side logs. This, I have not seen any opening for a service engineer in the SAF team in India. So as for my understanding, this is exclusively there in US and UK. The CXC CAT PM team, this is there across the globe. The feature PMs are mostly located in US. Product manager architects are also mostly located in US. The software engineers, as per my understanding, are mostly located in US, but there might be developers working from other regions as well. So I have already shown you guys how to apply for the role. When you're applying for the role, you can put in the filter for the location as well, and by that way you can put in the filter. But the point that I'm trying to make is all the roles for support and field, they are available across most of the regions. And in India, you will find all these roles available. For IDC, well, it is subjected to opening, but I mean, this role is definitely present in India. The other roles, well, it depends, right? Okay. Now, as I said, the other roles related to Intune, which are not direct, I mean, you don't work exclusively on Intune, but they are, I mean, you can think of its sister concerns. One would be MMD. Well, if you need to prepare for MMD, then you need to be very good in autopilot as well as MMD. If you have not worked on management of Android and iOS, that is fine. But Microsoft Managed Desktop is for management of Windows, right? So you need to be good with Windows. You need to have a good understanding of what Windows is, and especially autopilot. And then, well, obviously you need to have a good understanding of what Microsoft Managed Desktop is as well. Cloud solution architects, I've already said, you need to know multiple technologies. You are going to work as a deployment engineer. You are going to work exclusively on deployments. And product marketing manager mostly works on marketing of the product. I don't have much information around this, but yeah, I mean, if you are preparing for any of these roles, then for service engineers, you already know what is it that you need to prepare. Okay, now let's discuss some sample questionnaire. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull up a role, and then I'm going to talk about a sample question that probably could be asked in an interview. Again, this is just an example. So the question might be different, but it more or less should be of the same level. Again, it differs from position to position and depends upon what we have written in the resume, right? So let's first talk about a support engineer role. So let me give you an example of a question that might be appropriate for a support engineer role for Intune in Microsoft. So let's say that you are enrolling a Windows device and the enrollment of that Windows device is failing. Okay. What are the troubleshooting steps that you are going to follow? What are the things that you are going to check as far as troubleshooting is concerned? Okay, in that scenario. Now, this is a flow related question. Okay, so you need to understand the prerequisites for a Windows enrollment, and then you need to understand that if anything is failing, then what things to check first, what things to check second, right? The sequence in such questions is very important and it shows your depth. So in this question, you can just say that, oh, you know what, I will just see whether the license is assigned to the user or not. And you can just stop there. That is the right answer, right? Or you can maybe say that, okay, you know what, first I will check the license, then I will check whether it's impacting one user or multiple user, whether it's impacting one device or multiple device. Because if it's one user, then it's user specific. If it's multiple user, then it could be something at a wider scale, right? If it is one device and if the same user is able to enroll the other device, then it could be something with the device as well, right? Or something could be that device is connected to the network that device is connected to, right? Maybe that device is behind a firewall and when we connect it to an open network, it works fine, right? And then as far as the prerequisites are concerned, as I said, licensing, the MDM authority, and the enrollment restrictions, how many other devices has that person enrolled, right? What is the error message? Obviously, this has to be one of the important questions that we ask. What is the error message that we are getting? An error screenshot, right? And then, I mean, obviously, it's going to be an error which somebody or the other has, experienced before, right? It's very unlikely that such an error would come up which has never been documented, first party or third party, right? So getting that error message is very important. And then the logs, right? So what logs are you going to collect? That is also very important, right? So if you're going, you need to know in the event viewer log where exactly in the event viewer, like in this case it would be device management enterprise diagnostic provider. In the event viewer, that is wherein you need to know what is the event ID for a successful enrollment, what are the errors that you're going to look at. In this case, if we are doing a Azure AD join and Intune enrollment, and if the MDM scope is not set, then obviously the device is only going to be Azure AD joined or Azure AD registered, but the device is not going to get Intune enrolled, right? So the point that I'm trying to make is the interviewer has given us a scenario that a device is not getting enrolled to Intune, right? So we have to think about, we have to first narrow down, we have to ask counter questions and narrow down the scope, right? That how many devices, how many users, same user, different device, same device, different user, whether all these, how are those permutations and combinations working. You need to understand what kind of enrollment we are doing, whether we are trying to enroll via provisioning package, whether if we are doing it via provisioning package, whether the same package is working on a different device or not, whether we are trying to enroll via group policy, if we are trying to do the enrollment of that Windows device via group policy, whether, let's say, the prerequisite are met or not. Like in this case, the device needs to be hybrid Azure AD joined and needs to have a PRT, right? Only then you can do a group policy enrollment, right? Or if the device is co-managed, and if you're doing an enrollment via co-management, then whether the device is co-managed or not, whether the scheduled task is getting created or not, which runs the device enroller.exe. The point that I'm trying to make here is this question is a open-ended question, right? A Windows device not getting enrolled, what are the troubleshooting steps? This is a open-ended question. And what the interviewer is seeing is how deep are you willing to go while troubleshooting? Are you just checking the license assignment and then saying that, yeah, everything is fine? Or are you trying to first ask these questions and trying to narrow down the issue and then doing the troubleshooting and then checking the logs? And most importantly, understanding what you can understand from the error message, right? So that would be what a support engineer does. Now a support escalation engineer would be doing, so when you're applying for a support escalation engineer role, obviously you have to answer everything that a support engineer is doing, because a support escalation engineer can I mean, you never know whether that preliminary level of troubleshooting has already been done or not, right? So you have to do that level 100 level of troubleshooting, and then you have to do that next level of troubleshooting as well, right? Like for example, let's say that there is a BitLocker policy that we are deploying from Intune, but that BitLocker enrollment is failing. Okay, what are your troubleshooting steps? Now, a support engineer would have, I mean, identified the same thing, whether the policy is correctly made or not, and whether the assignment and all that stuff is fine or not. What is the error that we are getting from the portal? We'll check the device management enterprise diagnostic provider log from the device and seeing whether the device is getting that policy or not. What is the error message, BitLocker API logs and stuff like that. Now, the support escalation engineer is going to take it to a, and all the support engineer is supposed to do a lot of repros. The customer has an issue, the support engineer has to repro it in his environment with the same version of Windows, with the same kind of configuration in the portal, and see whether it's working for him or not. Because that is the way to know whether it's a customer related issue or whether it's a product related issue, right? So a lot of repros is involved in any of the roles when you are here in MS. But yeah, I mean, a support escalation engineer is going to do troubleshooting at a level higher, right? So he's maybe going to enroll a device, deploy a BitLocker policy, and then he's going to take a MDM trace from the device and see that whether the policy is coming down to the device or not, right? And over here he will be doing it at a similar OS version as what the customer is reporting, and then he would be taking a MDM diag log and he will be checking whether in the diag log he's able to see or not. Then he will be going into the MDM registry hive wherein the policy resides and inside policy manager, and then he will be seeing whether the policy has actually come down in the registry or not. Once he has substantiated that, then he is going to check the BitLocker relevant registry, whether that registry has been updated with the policy that we received or not. Then obviously he is going to check the MDM tag logs and he is going to check the BitLocker related logs, right? And then from all of this, he would try to identify whether the policy was successfully deployed and whether device got that policy or not. From the backend, he is going to take the Intune device ID and probably the UPN, and then from the backend service side logs, he is going to check whether, I mean, he can probably check whether the policy was successfully deployed or not, and whether the device successfully got that policy or not in different Kushto tables, right? So the support escalation engineer again is trying to correlate the flow with the logs and trying to identify whether it's an Intune issue or whether it's an OS related issue. There's a lot of chance that so Intune at the end of the day is a delivery mechanism. We have deployed the policy to the device, but after the device got the policy, there is a chance that maybe the OS is not behaving the way it is supposed to behave, right? So then in that case, we have to collaborate with the Windows folks. So we have to first rule out Intune from this case, right? So by looking at the Intune related logs, the support escalation engineer is going to try to do that, right? So this is the same kind of a question, but the support escalation engineer needs to know the flow. He needs to know how and what to check at the backend logs. He needs to know what are the different kind of traces one might have to take from the device end, and he has to rule out Intune. Because if the support escalation engineer fails, then he is going to escalate the case to the product group, right? Similar kind of question would be asked to a technical advisor as well if you are applying for a technical advisor role. However, in this case, one of the KRAs is training the team, right? As we saw in the job description, which was publicly available. So it involves creating KBs, providing insights to the team, managing the team, and all of that stuff. So you can expect some management related questions in case you're applying for a technical advisor role as well. Okay, now let's talk about a field role. We are going to take care of the similar instance. So wherein we are going to say that there is a customer who wants to implement BitLocker and the devices are already encrypted by 128-bit AES algorithm. Now the customer is saying that he needs to use 256 bits. Okay, and there are some devices which are there are some devices for which you need to do silent encryption via BitLocker. Now you have to plan out the deployment strategy. So in this case, now as a consultant, you see that the kind of question is different. Now there is a strategy that you have to identify. So before you identify the strategy, you have to account for the fact that there can be different kind of devices that are present in the environment, right? So in this case, the answer is going to be a little different. So I mean, from let's say that a device is encrypted by a BitLocker by a 128-bit algorithm, and you want to change it to 256-bit, then you have to do some customization over here, because you cannot just switch from 128 to 256 as of today. So in this case, you will have to first decrypt the device. So that you can do by probably deploying a PowerShell script, right? So the step one would be getting a list of all the devices that are already encrypted by 128-bit. Step two would be deploying a PowerShell script to all those devices and making sure that those devices are decrypted. Step three would be finding out of all these devices, how many devices have a TPM chip, because we are planning on doing a silent encryption, right? And for silent encryption, the device needs to have a TPM which is enabled. Step 4 would be, once we have identified how many of those devices have a TPM chip, then we would be creating a new BitLocker policy for 256-bit algorithm with silent encryption turned on, and we would be deploying that. Step 5 would be, from the Intune portal, we will be getting a report and seeing that how many devices have failed, how many devices have succeeded. And then the next step would be trying to figure out how many of those devices succeeded and how many failed, and trying to troubleshoot all of that. So the point that I'm trying to make is, as a consultant or a PFEs or a fast track or a EE, I mean, you have to account for a deployment strategy wherein the customer wants you to do something. Let's say that the customer, let me give you another example. Let's say that the customer wants to deploy certificates from Intune, right? Now we have to create a strategy. So first we have to reach back to the customer and find out what exactly he's planning on using the certificates for. Is it for VPN authentication? Is it for Wi-Fi authentication? What is the on-prem infrastructure that he has, which is going to best meet his use case, whether PKCS is going to meet it or whether SCEP is going to meet it. If he wants to make use of SCEP and NDES, whether he has an on-premise CA or not. If he doesn't have an on-premise CA, we might need a third-party CA, whether he has a subscription for a third-party CA or not. If he has an NDES, what kind of proxy does he have? Does he want any kind of load balancing via for NDES or not? And once we have answers to all these questions, then we are going to figure out what the strategy is. Then we are going to tell him that, okay, you know what? You have a CA, you need to set up one server which needs to work as an NDES. That NDES cannot be the same server as a CA. In the NDES server, you need to install a connector from Intune. It needs to have outbound connectivity to the Intune service. You need another server wherein you are going to install a proxy. It can be Azure App Proxy, it can be Web Application Proxy. That server can be same as the NDES server, or it can be different. Now for load balancing, you can have a couple of NDES servers both pointing to the same CA, or you can have a couple of NDES servers both pointing to different CAs, and then each NDES server is going to have its own NDES URL, and we are going to provide that NDES URL in the SCEP profile that we are going to create. And then we will talk about how exactly the load balancing happens via SCEP, and then we are going to tell them that once the SCEP is deployed, what is going to be, how that SCEP can be integrated with the Wi-Fi. When we are using Wi-Fi, we'll talk about how exactly what are the attributes that needs to be selected in the Wi-Fi or in the Radius server so that the authentication works fine. So the point that I'm trying to make is, working in the field role and creating these strategies involves asking a lot of questions, because the customer might not know which feature in Intune is best suited for his requirement, right? So we have to consult with the customer. We have to find in the support, the customer is coming to us and saying this is the issue, we fix that issue. But in the field, we are not just fixing any issue, we are figuring out what is the end goal and what is it that the customer wants, and then using our knowledge and expertise to figure out which feature in our product best meets the use case, and then deploying that, and then if any customization is needed, then doing that customization as well. Okay. Now preparing for a IDC role. Now, as I said, if you're preparing for a service engineer for ACE role, then it would involve level 200 kind of questions for Intune. So whatever you did for support escalation engineer questions, the same thing would be applicable here. On top of that, you need to be good in M365, in couple of other products in M365 as well, which can be SharePoint, Exchange, any Teams, any of that, right? Okay, service engineer SAF role, this is purely triple E kind of a role. Need to be very, very technical at looking into the background logs. So if you're, I'm not, I mean, as they say never. But then again, if you're applying externally, then you wouldn't have had access to the backend database already, right? And if you don't have access to the backend database already, then um, um, you might not know how to look at the backend database. Maybe there is some other kind of database that you have had access to, and you're good with running queries in that database. If it's there, then probably you can use that expertise when you're applying for this role. But this role is going to involve a lot of looking into the service side logs. The CXC CAD product manager role and the CXC CAD product manager role is going to involve a lot of deployment and a good level of Intune insights. You need to know how to work with the customers. It's a customer facing role, as well as you need to be a level 200 to 250 plus, because you never know which feature in Intune the customer is going to end up using, right? And then you need to make sure that whenever you are doing any kind of, so this, you can think of this as a amalgamation of what a support escalation engineer would be doing plus what a field engineer would be doing, because over here you're doing some kind of troubleshooting, you're also doing deployment, you're collecting insights from the customer, you're working with the PMs. So this is an amalgamation of all the roles, right? Feature product manager, well, for this you need to be very good in a specific feature I mean, let's say that a specific feature that you need to work upon, that is what, let's say there is an Android PM, he's going to exclusively take care of Android. And as I said, architects are product manager architects or cloud solution architects are overall responsible for deployment of a product. For an architect role, you need to be level 200 plus on multiple technologies. And I cannot really comment on the questions asked if you're appearing for a software engineer role, because they are all coding and development related questions. So probably you will be asked questions related to what coding language you are using, and then probably some questions related to, I mean, some instances or some scenarios that will be given to you that you will have to develop a program, write a program, or write a code to substantiate that. For MMD, as I said, most of the questions would be related to MMD and autopilot. So, I mean, you need to be very good in autopilot because that is what we are using in Microsoft Managed Desktop, as well as MMD. So, all the different ways of doing autopilot, right? Now, again, if it's an autopilot question for a support engineer, it's going to be what are the various ways of doing autopilot and what are the logs you are going to check, what are the prerequisites, what's the background flow. For a support escalation or a technical advisor, well, you need to know the background flow very well and the logs that you're going to collect at each of those steps, right? Let's say that autopilot fails. What do you check in ESP? Where do you get the logs from? How do you get the logs in the OOBE, right? What are the network trace you take? How do you take the network trace? What do you check in the network trace? How do you make sure that, I mean, it's an issue with an endpoint not being open, right? So these are the questions for a support escalation engineer, for a technical advisor. And all these questions plus some questions related to MMD is what would be asked if you're appearing for a service engineer role for a MMD, right? Cloud solution architects, we've already spoken about this, and product marketing manager, I am not exactly sure. So the intention, guys, was letting you guys know what kind of questions we can expect. However, I mean, this was just a framework. The kind of questions is always depends upon what we have written in our resume, what is the position we are applying for, and so long and so forth. But I hope that the questions provide us an insight into the approach that we should have while we are preparing for any of these interviews. And then I want to give you guys 2 cents on life in Microsoft. So again, you might say that this is a biased 2 cents, but still I wanted to share my experience. So I had an opportunity of joining Microsoft in 2018 as a support engineer for Intune in the vendor role. Then I became a full-time employee as a support engineer. Then I got an opportunity to work as a intern technical advisor. Then I joined the IDC org as a service engineer in the ACE team. And right now I'm working as a CXC CAT product manager for Intune. So I have seen all these roles, and I also have had an experience in the service-based organization. And I must say that the life in Microsoft is just awesome. because of the compensations that we are offered, plus the perks and benefits that we are offered, plus the work-life balance that we have, plus the freedom that we get to work on the things that we want to, plus the opportunities that are there outside of what we are currently working on in case we want to learn something new. And I mean, it's an ocean inside Microsoft. So I hope that this is an inspiration enough for us in case we are looking for an Intune related role in Microsoft. And if we are, then I hope that this nugget was in some ways helpful in understanding the different kind of roles that are present inside Microsoft related to Intune, how we can apply for any of these roles, what kind of questions we should expect, and how to prepare for all of this. So once again, I hope that this has been informative for you. I would like to thank you for viewing. This is your friend Saurabh Sarkar signing off.